In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at the Introduction to Illustrator, or Demo number 1. So inside of Illustrator, we're going to take a look at the interface, some of the tools, how to make a new artboard and a new document in Illustrator. We'll also learn how to add a grid system for outlining a project concept, and also putting in things like called placeholders, placeholder shapes, and placeholder text. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So first off, we'll hop into Blackboard and we'll go into our project area. I've already got it opened. And we're going to go ahead and download the demo files for the project. So I'm going to go into Project 2, Additional Resources. I'm going to go down to the bottom and find my link for Illustrator demo files. Make sure that you're downloading and accessing Blackboard from Firefox. If you're not, you might encounter errors while trying to download the demonstration files. I use the save command and say OK. And my file will download. Alright, so here's my Illustrator help file. Pull it up on the computer. And I'm going to go ahead and drag this out to the desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and actually also create a folder to drop these into. So I'll just generate some new folders on the desktop. Project 2, and we'll use the same kind of system that we used in the last project. Have a main project folder, some internal folders. So you might have things like images, hopefully not many. And you might have text. And there's really not much more that you'll have for this project. You might also have a folder, I forget, one for docs, so anything that you make notes on throughout the project process, whether it's a project exercise you have to make notes on or working on your artist statement, can all go in there. I have one for images here, and this is specifically for an image we'll use in the demo exercise. That will be a reference photograph that we will trace. Now we won't do that in this demo, that'll be later down the line, but it'll be a place for us to put it so that we keep it separate from these other items. And then text is for any text that we actually take from the web to include in our design later for our paragraphs that we will develop for part of our informational poster design. Alright, so I'm actually going to go ahead and bring this zip folder in here, open it up, extract my files, and there's only 2 in here, so you should have a sketch and an image. So we're going to have both of these available to us to use. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this into my images folder. And then I'm going to probably leave my sketch. We'll go ahead and put that inside there too because it is considered an image because it is a scanned image. So we'll leave those in there. And now we're going to go over to Illustrator. That's the big AI icon on your desktop. And mine's already launched, so it got through the splash screen, the introduction screen, and those things. So let's talk a little bit about Illustrator. As you may notice in Illustrator, this does differ from Photoshop slightly. The key thing to notice is that the interface is open, that there's no lock-in window canvas area in the center when you first open the software. So it almost looks like there's an error. Like there's something wrong, but there's really not. So here's how we'll look at it. Like first off, we have all the basic tools here that we need to be able to work with something, except for a document open. So let's start off by looking at each of the panel sections on here. So first off, at the top, we have our usual panels up here. These are actually, this will be the same placeholder area, this bar across the top, for tool options. Same as Photoshop. So any tool you have selected with an active canvas will show options across the top. And since we're on the subject of tools, over here on the left you'll notice the long strip. Same as Photoshop, there are tools listed all along this side of the screen that you can also expand into a double bar system side by side, or just have it as one long strip across the screen by using this double arrow. Now on the other side of the screen, over on the right, we have our panels. Again, just like Photoshop, the organization of Illustrator very much mirrors the way that Photoshop looks on the outside. So we have all of our panels over here for accessing different functions, different capabilities within the Illustrator interface, including keeping up with things like our layers or artboards, and even things like swatch libraries or playing with color themes. So this is our basic layout. Now in the middle, in a minute, we're going to launch a new document and it will appear and fill in this empty space on screen for us. So let's go ahead and initiate a new document. So go to File, New, we'll get our new document screen, and we'll go ahead and initiate a brand new document. So first off, we'll start off on the right foot by giving it an appropriate file name. So again, since you're working with it as the demo file, it doesn't hurt to put, like at the front end of it, demo, and then you can put your name, and then you can put the semester, year, followed by the project. Now once you're done with that, we'll come down and we'll see that there are some different features inside of Illustrator for opening a brand new document. Number one, you get something called artboards. Now if you remember from Photoshop, we were designing on a main surface inside of the main interface area called a canvas. Illustrator instead uses what's called an artboard. Again, these are sort of metaphors that they use in the system to connect with familiar forms to the field that it's developing in. So in this case, it's an artboard. Now, the interesting thing about Illustrator is that you have the ability to add more than one open artboard to a single document. So you could have 1, 2, you could have 3, you could have up to 99 of these inside of one document together. The key benefit to that is on the design side of things is that it allows you to make multiple sizes or styles of a single document design, multiple logos, maybe even design out stationery and different types of printed media or for the web. It's specifically designed that way, again, with a designer in mind. Illustrator is full of those capabilities, and they are all specifically catered to graphic designers. So we'll start off, and we'll actually open 2 so that you can see the effect of the artboard feature. We'll come down, and we have other things that are specific down here. A lot of Illustrator is geared towards working with illustration materials and also typography and text. So a lot of its measurement system that you start with for units is measured in a system that is typical for text. We will work with it in a familiar format for the time being, inches, but just so you're aware, the equivalent points is what's used for measuring type. So we'll go to inches instead for now, for easy reference. And we're going to start off with a different size document for width and height. Now, as far as that's concerned, we can actually use the size option up here and change our size from letter to tabloid. Tabloid is actually a standard design size for posters. Also been used in newspaper spreads for a single side spread, but it's very common for poster design. And for our demonstrations, we'll be working with our poster design first in terms of developing and establishing design elements within a project. So as you see, a poster is an 11 by 17 inch poster area. You can obviously set dimensional orientation of information over here, so it could be a vertical or horizontal. Now for our purposes, we're actually going to work with a horizontal for the design that we will end up with. So we're going to go ahead and leave it on this second little icon of this little man over here. There's nothing that we will edit down below in the advanced section. I might mention real fast that there are things here that are important, such as setting color modes, and there's only 2 options you get. You can either have CMYK or you can have RGB. These are both based on what your actual finishing intent or printing intent is. So is it going to be outputted to the screen, or is it going to be outputted to print? Is it going to be outputted to a 4-color print processor or inkjet? Those all depend on how you handle this part. Now, most common printers use RGB. It should be understood. Now you see that this popped up because it tells us that this color mode is different from the space that's been established in our document. So we may have to go change that elsewhere. But CMYK is by far the most common when working with graphic printing material, as most people use offset printing and prepress tools with that. Now for our purposes, we'll be working in RGB though for the time being. We'll leave our raster effects alone. Again, we're not going to be using photographic imagery or media, and we shouldn't be working with pixel effects inside of Illustrator either. Okay, we'll go ahead and say OK and launch the document. All right, so immediately you can see how the document is launched, and what you also see is the immediate effect of the artboard, multiple artboard tool in action. So we have one artboard and two, just like we assigned inside the File Open menu. And they always appear kind of standard like this, where they're side by side or stacked one on top of the other. So you'll have them this way conveniently so that you can see multiple designs next to each other at a time in case you want to make variations and those kinds of things. Now that we have our artboard open, you can actually already see the effect of having an active artboard, and now different areas of panels are working. They have active color swatches and tools. We also have our tool options are now visible whenever we're working with them inside the sidebar over here. So now we can go ahead and start opening things into Illustrator to work with. So our first step is to get our sketch and work with making a layout grid for our image, for our canvas area. So let's go ahead and find our sketch image, and I'm just going to open it directly into Illustrator. All right, and then I'm going to go find where my image is stored, and I put everything on my desktop so that it runs smoother. My images folder where I put it, and grab my demo sketch. All right, now here's my image. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is once you open it up, there's actually multiple ways to open imagery into Illustrator. We can either choose to open them on things like this, where we open it on its own document. We can also do this, where we go to File, we go to Place. Now when you choose File Place, this actually gives you the ability to choose where you want to drop the document, how big you want to make it, and then it drops it directly in and places it as a brand new layer inside of your artboard that you draw it on top of. So that's where we got our image out. Now, obviously our image dropped in and it's turned kind of funny on its side. So we need to go ahead and correct that part. Now the beauty of having placed the image into our document is that it leaves up a transformation rectangle around our image. And we know it's a transform tool that's turned on for placing an image when it has the X through it. That's a clear indication in Illustrator that you are placing an image and not just transforming one. So it has this giant X, reference X, to show you the rectangle. So to rotate it, I'm going to move my mouse right outside one of the corners, and I'm going to hold down Shift so that whenever I click and drag this thing around on screen, it's going to move in 90-degree increments or 45-degree increments. So I'm going to grab it and click and drag, and there we go. So now it's rotated the right way. And now I'm going to expand the size of it. So again, you can hold down Shift as a shortcut key and grab the corner, or you can come up here to the top while that place file is selected, and you can come up here between W and H, width and height, and click on the chain link. And that will lock together your proportions for your image. Now, mine's not actually working at the moment, so something's being funny on me, and that's okay. So what I'm going to do here real quick is I'll just revert back to working with Shift, and we're just going to click and drag to make our document be big enough to where it covers our entire artboard. Now if we look at our reference image sketch real quick, What we have on here is an example image of a computer screen placed inside of a poster 11 by 17 area. So we can see where the borders of the poster are supposed to be, and then where the image is placed inside the poster boundary or perimeter. So we're just going to blow this up to where it's approximately the same correct size for filling our poster area. And again, it doesn't really matter if you stretch or twist this image in any way, because again, it's just the sketch. We're only referencing this background image in here, okay? All right. Now, I'm going to navigate around a little bit. I'm actually using my mouse wheel to navigate the screen. If you don't have that ability to use the mouse wheel, you can also use the glove tool down here on the bottom of your toolbar. And you can click and drag to navigate around your visible artboard areas. And then you can use Command plus or Command minus to zoom in. Same as Photoshop, nothing new about that part. But what I'm looking at right now is I'm making sure that my image lines up with the sort of corner markers for my actual artboard. So I'm kind of resizing a little bit here and there, getting it approximately right. It does not have to be perfect for this process. But what we're going to do is we're going to actually outline this entire image area and sort of its major component spots to create a wireframe guide system by which we can use to lock shapes into later. So to add guides onto our screen, we're going to go up to the top of our screen. We'll go to View. And we're going to turn on a tool called Rulers. Now we have to have rulers on in order to grab or activate guides on screen. So it works like this. You move your mouse over the measurement ruler area and you click and drag from inside that ruler to pull out this little reference line. See this little line that just popped out on my screen? I'm going to pull that down and I'm going to put it right about here where it rests on top of this sort of monitor image. Now when I dropped it, notice it turned blue. Now if I move my mouse on it, it turns kind of a turquoise, cyan type color. And again, that's just a reference to show you that there's a guideline here. So we can drag these horizontal guidelines from the top ruler, and then if we want vertical guidelines, we can go to the vertical ruler. So I'm going to go to the vertical ruler and click and drag inside that ruler to pull out a vertical guideline. And I'm going to sort of match it up to sort of block off where I want the outside edge of the monitor to be. So I'll do that on both sides. And I'll also go down to the bottom of the screen to sort of mark off an approximate spot of where I see the bottom of the monitor. And some other places up here, like making the thickness of the monitor. And again, I'm just kind of eyeballing these for the most part. But I want it to kind of be a similar thickness all the way around. Now that I got the monitor placed, now I'm going to mark off some other areas like the mouth on screen. So I'm going to just kind of mark off a general outer square area because the mouth is reaching top to bottom on the screen. So I'm just marking off its width. And then I'm going to also get this design area down here for the monitor stand. So I'm going to need a line for this down here. And then I'm going to squeeze this one in a bit. So I'm noticing that as I drop it in, this side is wide and this one is not. So we have to be careful with things like that. And we kind of use these to also notice like differences and distances on each side. That way we can make like a very well orchestrated and designed image area. The beauty of working with guides is that they help set up your composition for placing important elements inside of the design. So learning to use things such as the rule of thirds to break apart your image area into square sections, usually identified in a 3x3 grid format, to where you can place information or important imagery along the outskirts of those third areas. So guides help us do that when working in terms of working with a layout. There are many different ways you can lay out a screen in order to make sense of information, to properly space apart documents, columns, and so on. And for us, we're just breaking apart the basic areas. We can see that at the bottom down here, there are notes in the sketch related to where the paragraphs are going to be going for our information for the piece. We can also see information on here like where there's a title, subtitle, and additional notes outside for us to know what to do. So again, this is just a reference image we're placing in the screen to use in our design. Another thing that we're supposed to do in this part of the demo is actually drop in some other references into it, such as a type text reference called lorem ipsum. It's another way of calling it placeholder text or filler temporary text. Lorem ipsum text is basically a long collection of Latin sentences and words run together to use to represent placement of where actual text might be used in the final design. So again, it's kind of a temporary thing to help you kind of visualize. So we're going to work with some of our tools over here in the toolbar, and we're going to work with establishing some areas to put text into the document. So I'm going to go to my toolbar on the left, and I'm going to go down to the T tool down here. This is the type tool. We're going to click on it once, and we're going to come down into our design. And what we're going to do, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit and hold spacebar to navigate my screen over. Like we learned in Photoshop, you can hold down space to click and navigate around. And I'm going to line up my selection with this little corner down here in my guides. This will help to lock on anything that we draw there. So I'm going to draw out a text box. So see as it pulls out the text box on screen, I now have a place that I can drop text. So I'll let that one go right there. I'll go ahead and grab another text box. I'm going to put one right here in the middle. And the beauty is that even though we're making these right now, we can always change them at any point. This is just to get things started. Now, if you notice, like as I add a text box, Illustrator assumes that you're ready to type in that box. So when you start hitting other shortcut keys or anything, it starts typing in letters. So if you don't want that, go back to your black arrow tool at the top of the screen to disengage typing inside of a box so that you can go on back to the T tool and type or create a new type box. Now we've created our placeholder text areas. Now we need some placeholder text to work with. So let's go ahead and find the page related to working with placeholder text. So we're going to go back to Firefox and go back into our project, which on my screen has temporarily turned off. I'm not sure why. So let me see if I can pull it back up. Here we are. So we'll go back and we'll go into Project 2. And we're going to go into the module. And I'm going to skip ahead to get to this part, which is demo number 1, working in Illustrator. And I'm going to go to the first one here for demo exercise 1. And we're going to use this link up here under materials for demo exercise 1. So I'm going to click on that to open up a new page, and this should take me to a lorem ipsum generator. Now it asks you a couple things like how many paragraphs do you want to generate? Well, first off, we only need one paragraph per box, so we only need one paragraph for it to generate for us. Now it shows over here the text preview, so what you're going to get. Again, this is all in Latin, so it's very old, kind of strange language. And it also gives you options like how long do you want the paragraph, short, medium, long. Medium, or actually long, is not a bad one to go with when working with it. You don't need anything like really long, but long should be sufficient. Okay, so we'll stick with long. Now that it's generated on screen, we'll go ahead and select it, click and drag your mouse over it, and copy it to your board, and so that you can actually have a copy of the text. So I'm going to drag my selection over it, put it on the clipboard by hitting Command C. And then I'm going to go back to Illustrator. And I'm going to find one of my text boxes down below. Now if you don't see it, you may have to move your mouse around until it appears because text boxes are invisible. Another thing you can do is go over here to the right side of the screen and go down to your layer panel and expand your first layer, and you'll notice that you have different layers in here by name. Some of them actually say type, which means that those are type layers. If we want to activate them, we can't just click on the words in here. We actually have to click on these target circles, and when you do that, it will change the selection in the main canvas or artboard. So I can see which artboard I want to work with, or what part of the design I want to work with. So here's the type box I needed. And I can even go in, like a good thing to remember, guys, when you're working in Illustrator or Photoshop, is to remember to always rename layers as you go. So if you got new things designed in here, try to keep up with them, add names to them for reference. So my type area is active, so that I know which one I need. And what I'm going to do is go to my type tool, and I'm going to move my mouse inside this area and click, and it should allow me, oh, you know what, my fault. If you just click anywhere inside the random area on screen, it just starts typing in random places. So if your mouse looks like this when you move it over your type box that you've already made, it's going to start typing a brand new text box somewhere. So instead of doing that, move it over to the edge over here, and that way it can detect where you're wanting to type from the edge. Once you've done that, you should see a blinking cursor when you click, and now we can paste our text. Now you can do that with Command V to paste in your lorem ipsum placeholder text. You can also go up to Edit Paste from the main Illustrator menu. So we have one in, so let's go ahead and find our other text boxes. So I'm going to go one by one over here until I have text in all three of them. Okay, great. Now I've got placeholder text for those. Now I need to also make boxes for these other areas, like my type text titles. So I'm going to make new title boxes, one main one right here through the center for the mouth area. So I'm going to make one right through here to hold my title text. And now that it's active, I may also go ahead and type in the word that is part of my title. Now if you notice, this word actually says language, and it has greater than or less than signs on the outside. And so we're going to type it exactly like that. So use your keyboard and type in the word language with an open and a closed bracket on it. Now if you zoom in with your keyboard, you should be able to see how it came out. So it looks pretty good. Alright, we'll just click out of that, zoom back out again, and we'll put another text box up here for this sort of subtitle at the top. Make sure you don't have caps lock on. There we go. So there is power in, that's the first word at the top, first phrase, and then we'll come down below. And we'll make the other phrase too. So join the coding revolution. Alright, now we have our placeholder text in place. Other things that we might do in this case when we're working with this is also to make placeholder shapes for design elements in our screen, or on our screen. So at this point, I'm going to make a placeholder shape for my monitor first. So I'll start off with drawing in pieces of my monitor. And actually what we'll do, tell you what, we'll start off by drawing this central image first. It's our most outer layer in the entire design. When you start drawing with shapes and layers inside of Illustrator, they all stack one on top of the other, just like layers do in Photoshop. So if I draw this background layer first, and then this mouth layer, the mouth is not going to appear. It'll be underneath, or it'll be over the very top. So here we go. We'll start at the very back here. And I'm going to start with this outer corner that represents the corner of my drawing area for my computer frame. I'm going to use the rectangle tool. I'm going to line up my cursor with the outer corner of this guide, and I'm going to click and drag and bring it all the way over. You'll notice that Illustrator will lock onto the guides automatically for you at some point and drop in the shape. Now the shape comes in looking like this, a solid black rectangle, which unfortunately is covering our design. So we need to actually turn off this main color inside the object. So to easily turn off shape, colors, and tones, we're going to go up to the top options bar. Since this is an actively selected object, it is showing us that it has blue control handles around the edges of it, which says it's active. So go up to the top and look at these two squares up here on your tool option bar. These two squares dictate two standards for using color inside of Illustrator: fill, which is the solid box right here, and stroke, which is typically an outline box. Strokes go around the outskirts of a shape or around a line segment inside of Illustrator. So I'm going to turn off the fill color. Now to turn it off, we'll expand this sort of preview swatch they give you. And I'm going to go to this little icon over here that shows this cross through. The cross through really does mean it's going to turn off the color and hide it. Now, instead of just having an invisible shape on screen, which will do us no good, we're going to go ahead and turn on the stroke line or the outline for that shape. So to do that, I'm going to go over to this square that has the cross through and open it, and we're going to switch that one to black instead. That way we get a subtle outline form around our object. Alright, so let's keep going. We now need to draw the inner screen area, so I'm going to grab another square and I'm going to start drawing my inner screen. Now I'm going to zoom in a bit. Illustrator does run some troubles because of some preview tool options that it gives you on screen for adjusting rectangles to round them off. But I'm going to go ahead and get closer and click into the corner and drag. I'm going to pull out my part of the artboard. Now I'm kind of dragging the screen a little bit. If you don't want to do that, then you will probably have to let go of your artboard at some point to make that possible. Now it's stretching my screen because my screen's not having enough. So that's okay. We'll drop the shape right here. And then I'm going to hold space to navigate my screen over. And then I'm just going to resize this shape. So to do that, I can just click on these outer control points that are active on my screen to drag it out the rest of the way. And again, I'm lining this up with the inner guides area. There we go, and that one's automatically drawn with the last setting we used for color application at the top. So the stroke line is the only thing getting painted. Now, we've got the outline, we've got the inner, now we're going to make the actual, we'll make like just a general reference circle for the lips for now. So we'll go ahead and draw in an ellipse from underneath the rectangle tool. So if you hold down the rectangle tool, go to ellipse, and we'll draw out a set of lips. Now I'm going to start from up here in the corner and just kind of click and drag out a circle. Again, this is just a reference circle, so it is not perfect. It's just to show that this will be placed here in our design. Again, to be used in a different way, probably later. Now other things that we have, like we have the stand for the monitor at the bottom, and we need a placeholder for that. So we'll just put a simple rectangle down here for now until we come up with something else. Alright, we'll go ahead and stop right there for that part, making our reference shapes and forms. And we're going to review our work by looking at it in outline view. Now to switch to outline view, this will just show us all the vector forms that we have drawn into Illustrator to this point. So we'll go up to the top Illustrator menu bar and go to View. We're going to go to Outline. Now when you turn on Outline, it really does simplify the interface down to just showing you the bare bones of your design. So all we see here right now is we actually see guidelines, which don't print, by the way. They're just preview tools that can only be visible inside of Illustrator. We also have our paragraphs present. They're visible. We have our reference circle and rectangles. We also have our reference outer outlines for our shapes. for a monitor. So we have all the pieces to kind of get started and make something of our design. And if we want to double check our work up against what it requires in Blackboard, we just go back and check what the demo exercise asks us to do, always to make sure that your work lines up with what's required from the project information. So we created our new artboard, we placed our guides into the scene, we drew our basic shapes for placeholders, as well for text boxes for text. We generated our placeholder text, we placed a title into the title box, and so now we're done. So we'll go back to Illustrator, and I'm going to switch my view back to preview at the top. And we're going to go ahead and save what we have so far. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to make sure I save it into my folder with my work, but not into the Images folder. And we'll put it out here, and we'll make sure that it's labeled correctly. So it should be a demo, and it should be this format, Adobe Illustrator AI. That's the native file format for Illustrator for saving media. So we'll go ahead and say Save. And it will pop up another Illustrator options dialog for you to use. This just tells you or gives you options for what version of Illustrator you want to save it as in case you want to be compatible with an old format instead of using new format tools. Subset fonts, like how many characters it will save, those are limited for it to save fonts to documents, mostly because fonts have to have permissions to be able to save them into and embed a document into a document. So if your font type does not have the permissions set by the original author inside the file, then it will not save your typeface into the document. You have to bring it with you. Now we'll talk more about that in a later demo. And we'll leave these other things on for now. And we'll say OK. And now if I go out to my Finder window, I should be able to find that my demo file is saved inside my project folder. And so there it is right there, all ready to go. So this will conclude this first tutorial in Illustrator. I hope you found it informative and look forward to seeing your own designs.